The sky was dark. It was as if the sun did not want to rise that day. Cold, harsh winds echoed through the empty streets of the square. But sharper than the cold was the fear piercing into people's hearts. And yet hundreds of people were there. Some walked silently. Some carried banners. Some showed their support only with their eyes. In every heart there was the same feeling, the longing for freedom. First seen, the first woman. In the middle of the crowd, a young woman was walking. She wore a leather jacket, determination written on her face. Each of her steps was a trace of courage carved into the stones of the square. She was determined to be the voice of a people silenced for years. But in that moment, a shadow fell upon her. Black masks, black uniforms, black gloves. They surrounded her quietly, yet with resolute steps. One of the officers rushed forward and covered the woman's mouth with his hand, and time stood still. Her eyes widened. Her breath was cut off. The crowd stepped back. No one dared to move forward, because everyone knew. One step meant the price of freedom. The woman struggled, but was lifted into the air by hands as hard as stone. Her body was being tossed around, but in truth what was being tossed at that moment was the people's hope. That scene showed everyone how heavy the price of freedom truly was. But the struggle did not end there. On the other side of the square, another young woman stood. With her red coat, she burned like a flame against the snowy ground. But her voice too was silenced. The tape pressed against her lips cut off her breath. It swallowed her screams. But her eyes, yes, those eyes stood firm, as if they were saying, "You can silence me, but you cannot destroy me." An officer pressed down on her shoulder. Her arms were twisted behind her back, unable to move. The crowd was silent. Some were crying. Some with fear, secretly recording the moment on their phones. And everyone knew. The voices silenced today would become tomorrow's greatest outcry. A little further away, there was a third young woman. She was kneeling on the snow, her head bowed. She wore a blue coat. But its blue was not the color of cold. It was the color of hope's light. The gray tape pressed against her lips was the symbol of the silence forced upon her. But the tears streaming from her eyes merged with the tape, creating an even more painful sight. The officer beside her was silent, but his gaze said everything. Don't speak. Don't resist. Be silent. But that young woman was not silent, because her scream was within the silence. That scream echoed across the snow. Even her silence was the cry of freedom. And through all of this, the great monument in the center of the square bore witness. Its stones were cold, but its memory was warm. For years, that monument had witnessed countless events. But perhaps it would remember most of all the silent screams of this day. One day when history is written, those stones will say, "I saw it." They were silenced. But their courage was never defeated. As the hours passed, the square emptied. The crowd dispersed, the police vehicles drove away. But the footprints left behind were like history engraved upon the snow. Because everyone knows, every silenced voice in truth grows louder. Every suppressed demand for freedom one day rises even stronger. Today, 3 young women were bound in chains. But the hope in their eyes spread into the hearts of millions. History has written this time and again. In Rome, the voices of silenced slaves turned into uprisings. In the Middle Ages, banned books continued to live in the memory of millions. In the modern era, every silenced people eventually reclaimed their freedom. Because history has proven one truth again and again. You cannot silence freedom. You cannot chain courage. You cannot hide the truth. Perhaps now those young women are buried in darkness within prisons. Perhaps they are alone. Perhaps they are waiting in silence. But these photographs, these memories, show that they are not alone. Because people remember. Because we are watching. And we do not forget. And so this story is not only the story of 3 women. This story is the story of millions who have been silenced. Of those condemned to live in fear, yet who never gave up resisting. Today perhaps they were silenced. But tomorrow their voices will become the language of millions. And freedom. The footsteps on this square. The courage in their eyes, the determination in their hearts. These are not just symbols of this moment. They are the seeds of tomorrow. Because hope never dies. Fear is fleeting, but courage endures. Remember this. Do not simply watch what happened today. Engrave it in your memory, because memory itself is resistance, because to remember is to defy, and freedom is reborn in the hands of those who refuse to forget. This story is not only the story of 3 women, it is the story of millions, the story of those silenced in every land, in every language, in every heart. And one day, these images will no longer be remembered only as the evidence of pain, but as the proof of victory. Sooner or later, we'll be one. And these images you see are not only the story of 3 young women, they are the story of millions who for years have been silenced, suppressed, and intimidated. Maybe today their voices have been silenced. Maybe today they have been chained. But history has always whispered the same truth to us. Every silenced voice rises again, louder than before. Every mouth that is forced shut becomes the tongue of millions. And every freedom that is suppressed will one day, without fail, be reclaimed. Today perhaps they are quiet, but tomorrow their voices will roar across the skies. Today perhaps they stand alone, but tomorrow they will march at the front of millions. And when that day comes, the world will hear a single unshakable cry. Freedom can never be silenced. So if you believe in these voices, if you believe in courage, in truth, in freedom, then stand with us. Join this journey, because together we keep the flame alive. Together, we carry their story forward. Together we ensure that silence never wins. And for more stories like this, stories of courage, resistance, and hope, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, because every subscription, every share, every voice raised is another step toward the day when freedom finally prevails.